All right, good evening. We'll call to order the Monday, October 28th, 2024 meeting of the Corte Madera Parks and Recreation Commission. Please join me in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Rebecca, can I please ask you to do roll call?
Commissioner Bodeman? Commissioner Koenig?
Here.
Commissioner Rose?
Here.
Commissioner Stoliar?
Here.
Commissioner Hitchcock?
Here.
And Vice Chair Charlie?
Here.
And Chair Miles is absent.
Thank you. Before we start with those items that are on our agenda, we'll start with open time for public comment on items that are not on the agenda. Speakers will be given 3 minutes apiece and can either raise their hand on Zoom or email comments to publiccomment@tcmmail.org. So Rebecca, do you have any raised hands or emailed comments, given there's no one in the audience here today?
I did not receive any emailed public comments, and we have no raised hands.
Okay, thank you. So we'll close public comment at this time. Seeing no presentations on the agenda. I've got that right. Yes, I'm going to move on to the consent calendar. Consent calendar. So these are items that are routine or have been previously discussed, and so therefore they do not require any further discussion. Any member of the public is welcome to make a comment or pull an item from the consent calendar for further discussion. I'll start by asking if anyone from the commission would like to pull anything from our consent calendar for discussion. Okay. And then if there's anyone from the public that would like to comment on an item on the consent calendar, they could raise their hand or again, email to publiccomment@tcmmail.org. Becca, have you seen any raised hands or received any emailed comments?
I did not see any raised hands, and we did not receive any emailed public comments on the consent calendar.
Right. Is there an award for me going through this agenda as fast as I am? All right. Okay. So I don't think it's necessary, but seeing that there was no public comment, but if anybody now from the commission has decided there's something else they would like to discuss, please let me know. Otherwise, I would entertain a motion to approve our minutes from September 23rd, 2024.
Move to approve.
I'll second. Perfect. Thank you. Rebecca, can we have a vote, please?
Commissioner Bodeman?
Yes.
Commissioner Koenig?
Yes.
Commissioner Rose?
Yes.
Commissioner Stoliar?
Yes.
Commissioner Hitchcock? Vice
Yes.
Chair Charlie?
Yes.
And Chair Miles is absent. Motion passes.
Thank you. All right, folks, that brings us to the business items. The first business item is discussion and possible approval of updated pickleball and tennis court rules for Town Park and Granada Park.
Good evening. So a little background, we were here last month, kind of talked about the current rules of the tennis courts, shared pickleball courts, and soon to open new town hall pickleball courts. We kind of did a deep dive into what other surrounding towns and cities are doing, kind of look for some comparisons, figured out what was the common thread, what things we wanted to kind of introduce in these new rules. Overall, there's good consensus and discussion on, what do we do? Do we keep the key system? Do we get rid of the key system? Do we allow people to reserve? Do we get rid of the lines at Town Park? I very much appreciate the discussion, helped me form these rules. Kind of in review, the commission was all in favor of, at this point, getting rid of the tennis court keys to make a little more open access. We looked at kind of putting up a QR code to basically look at who actually used the courts. we don't have some great real data of who's using the courts when. So a QR code is going to go up the first year to find out who plays pickleball, who plays tennis at both Granada and Town Park. A couple of small things about purchasing a pickleball rack system to kind of who's up next in line. And then kind of a determination of a reservable timetable, sorry, tongue twister, and looking at possibly open time compared to reservable time. So at the end of the last meeting, ad hoc committee was formed with Commissioner Rose and myself to kind of tackle this. We're here tonight to kind of discuss what we kind of finalized and brought forth and looking for kind of input and any changes to the draft copy of the rules. For right now, the biggest thing is we kind of looked at a public open play versus a reservation period. We really looked at, if you want to have an open play period, you want a good 2 or 3 hours for people to come together, gather, have a social atmosphere. And that's kind of what we kind of focused on, that open play period time. We very much kept all the open play rules current, the tennis court rules. We didn't change anything. So whatever the rules were there for tennis, we didn't change them. We instituted some new suggestions for open play for pickleball. Those rules are pretty much a combination of a couple cities around, very standard, waiting on a court with a paddleball system. Basically, all players have to rotate off unless no one's there waiting, just so there's a good flow of people going back and forth, especially for the open play time. Tonight, we're looking at open play timing 10 to 1, Monday through Sunday. So you knew, hey, if I want to just go and drop in and rotate through, it's 10 to 1. So that would be the open play time for both tennis and pickleball. You just rotate through. We looked at kind of a reservation period kind of off those hours. They're listed here pretty much mornings 8 to 10 and 1 to 10 on the Town Park courts Monday through Saturday. And then Sunday, the courts are closed by 6. That's why it ends at 6 o'clock. Okay, so lights don't turn on. Respective neighbors, we don't go till 6 o'clock. And then Granada and Town Park, 8 a.m. to 10, and then 1 to dusk for a reservational period. Reservations are taken on a first come first served basis. We have our system that we will have in January. We'll be able to handle the ability for people to reserve courts online, get a confirmation, have an email confirmation so they know what courts they've reserved when, and so they know when the courts they have. Most common, it looks as all individuals can reserve a court. No more than 1 court in a day or 3 courts in a calendar week. So they set those parameters up. So basically someone can't monopolize all the courts. So basically you create an account. It says, oh, I'm sorry, you've had too many of this one. You can't do it. Yes, there's some people going to throw the system. Sure. But at least it's a mechanism in place to say, hey, we don't want you out there every day. We want it to rotate through for a reservational period for the courts. We again are not going to let people reserve for lessons, team practices, or clinics at this time. It's just for the drop and play with your friends. At this time, we're not suggesting a reservation fee. It's something we can discuss tonight. Obviously, December, we'll talk about updating our master fee schedule. We can talk about it then. But most cities currently do not have a fee associated with it. That's obviously open for discussion. Couple other small rules, basically, hey, cancel reservation online in advance of your time. If court's left or vacant for 10 minutes at reservation time, hop in and play. So basically, hey, if it's left empty, no one's there, we're letting people just hop in and play. And then they'll get information and a confirmation. They need to bring that with them and say, hey, I have this tennis court, I have this pickleball court. So there's no fights, arguments, discussions. We still know there's some hostility between tennis players and pickleball players, but that is what they'll have as proof of reservation. And then 2 basic town court rules. Basically, when all pickleball courts are in use, the more players are waiting to play pickleball, they can use the tennis courts. We're asking that if you want to play pickleball, please use the pickleball courts first at Town Park, but tennis is open for tennis players. And the rest is just some basic cleanup of hours that weren't on the original rules that need to be posted, and then just, again, the amplified music. So that's kind of where we're at for the thing. Really no impact or fiscal impact, and then attached to the copy of the rules. And then open for any discussion or questions or thoughts.
Question. Sorry, my mic wasn't on. I was just asking if there were any commissioner questions before we open it up for public comment.
Yeah. Yes.
Take it away.
Wants to start? I'll start with one. I was just kind of curious how we got to the 7 days prior time frame. I just wonder if that's enough time. Some people like to plan kind of far in advance. And And then I was also curious, why are we saying that you could not use a reservation request for a lesson?
So sorry, two questions. The 7-day window is just a mechanism. It could be 7, it could be 14 days. It really doesn't matter. Just what most cities have done is that's the standard window for someone to reserve a court.
Mhm.
The lesson is basically you're making money off a public facility. So usually we don't allow people to rent out courts or rent out facilities to make money. Now, if you charged a fee if a fee structure was ever put in place, you'd probably have a higher for-profit or private money-making opportunity and charge a little more. But basically, we don't allow people to have private basketball lessons on the basketball court or run a private soccer clinic or private tennis lessons. So basically, you can't make money off a town facility.
Just to add a little bit to it, because I've talked to quite a few people that have been using different reservation systems. If you have an extended period of time allowing for it, you can find a lot more people making reservations and not even showing up, kind of just abusing it a little bit. So having it a shorter, concise window seems to be more successful. A lot of the systems, they even have it as 3 days, just to make sure that people aren't really kind of planning out months in advance. I think 7 is a pretty good.
And 7 is pretty standard. Like clubs are on here at 7 to get courts at a private club. So that's in line. I had a question regarding if there was thought of signage or an ability for people who present to the courts without a reservation to see if they're currently reserved or not. They need to wait the 10 minutes before they get started. Obviously, we're not going to have, a digital schedule up, I presume, but it might be useful to have a QR code that links right to the reservation system so that they can either maybe in that moment book if it's free or see, oh, I need to wait before I get started to avoid any of those discussions we talked about.
Yeah, I think there's going to have to be obviously updated signage anyway, and I can easily add a QR code. I mean, to the rules and also to the ability to reserve would be.
Yeah, that'd be great. Oh, and I'm sorry, one other quick thing I had. I presume the system will allow for this, but it will be interesting after, say, the first 6 months, 3 or 6 months. See if we can track when there are people who no-show, if there's like a habitual no-showing going on. Because they'll be attached to an account, right, to sign up. Are people going to check in when they get there?
No, you
Oh.
you won't. You only see cancellations. You
Oh.
won't see no shows because there's nobody there checking in as a attendant or
I see.
so you only know if somebody cancels, you'll get a notification. But the no shows only be if someone's there waiting and someone's there. So maybe that's a discussion of maybe there should be a fee attached to that. People are incentivized if you book the court, you show up and not just leave it.
On the topics of no-shows, I was looking at the points where that vacancy for 10 minutes means that we go into the open time policy. I was wondering if we could possibly have a waitlist system as well. So if people also wanted that, they could get notified that it's been 10 minutes, there's been vacancy, and move on to another person on the waitlist. So that way we can move on that way for anyone else who wanted that time slot as well.
I can ask. I don't know if the system does that, but I can ask. Does anybody know who uses courts? Other places if they have a wait list if someone drops?
I don't know, but I know that I've attended exercise classes where they have wait lists like that. Like if somebody drops an hour before, 2 hours before, it'll let the next person know that an opening exists. So that could be something they might be able to do.
Also, often what people will do is if you, let's say I want to play on Tuesday at 10 and I see that it's booked, often you just sort of check back again. It's sort of on the onus is on the person who wants to play and knowing that there might be cancellations, but if the system allows for it, it might be great.
I can ask.
And I know for the Pilates studio I work for, the wait list, they send automated text messages once a spot opens. So I just feel like, potentially maybe our public policy won't be utilized if people think that a spot's reserved, and this might be more a successful way of utilizing that space.
I agree with the idea of no cost for reserving. I think that's reasonable. And there's a lot of consideration about the no-shows. So the way I see it is you wait 10 minutes, and if the person's not there, then go for it. And then 12 minutes comes and they show up and go, wait, this is my time. You missed it? Is that how it works?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's going to be clearly posted on the outside of the tennis courts, but I think if you You have a 10-minute window and you're going to reserve the half hour or the hour block. At that point, the person's there waiting because they want to play. They miss it.
Okay, thank you.
Or maybe they can play together and have a match or something.
I think that's generally what would happen.
Okay,
is,
okay, yeah.
Once we're done, you guys can step in and this becomes open play.
Right.
And that's pretty standard for all things like dinner reservations, as well as court reservations.
So piggybacking on some of these, I'm wondering if it makes sense, because I don't want to discourage someone that's getting a lesson, but it's not paid. I understand the commercial limitation on having that, but that we add the word paid. So it's paid lessons we're worried about, right? It's not someone teaching me how to play pickleball.
Yeah, we're more concerned about the paid
Okay.
lesson. If someone's paying for you to, private instructor is.
Okay, all right. I'm echoing everybody's sentiment. Love to have Parks and Rec utilized fully and less fees, I think often makes that more doable. But I do think that if there is a habitual abuser who's canceling it and thereby either discouraging others from even going and just standing around waiting, or taking 10 minutes out of every hour, that it would be lovely to be able to track that. So I'm wondering if maybe we do have ability for folks to check in. And if we notice that there's someone that's just never checking in, that we can address that. So, and possibly, this is a cure for a problem that doesn't exist, but it's, you never know until you either have a check-in or someone complains about it enough or it's bad enough. So if there is a mechanism to track that, I think that would be great. Oh, and then the last thing, what happens? So all the pickleball courts are being used and the tennis courts are open.
We're talking town park.
Yep.
Okay, sorry.
Sorry. And a would-be pickleball player then goes over to the tennis courts to use that because all the pickleball courts are used and there's no one in the tennis court. And then 6 minutes into their game, a tennis player arrives. Does that tennis player then get to say, leave? Or what's that dynamic? I mean, I think people are generally pretty civilized, but it's just nice to have thought about that dynamic to avoid any conflict.
You're talking open play, correct?
Mhm.
So I think open play, they would follow the open play pickleball rules, and then when they're done, they would rotate out.
Got it.
But I mean, I think you could have the conflict where if somebody is in open play because tennis player didn't show up, they might be more aggressive, I would assume, because it's like, oh, I'm only 12 minutes late. I still want the court, but it's like, no, you're late. You need to go out of it. So I think it's just, they go into they go into open play for pickleball.
Got it. Okay. All right. Makes sense to me. All right. So is there anyone from the public that would like to comment or do you see any emailed comments or raised hands online, Rebecca?
I'm not seeing any raised hands online or in our audience, and we did not receive any email to public comments.
Cool. Is there any sort of action or direction that you need from us, Tim, or just the comments that you've heard today?
I think it's the comments I've heard. I think I will look into, obviously, the ability, can there be a waitlist system? Can we do a virtual check-in? I'll add the paid lessons to the part about the lessons being given and add a QR code on the new signage that basically links directly both to the rules and both to the reservation system. Unless there's anything else in the other rules I didn't highlight. If any questions, I think.
Can I just ask, the time slot you reserve, is it 1 hour? Is it
It's 1 hour, yeah.
1 hour? Okay. And I think that because this is going to be a significant change to what currently is in practice, a lot of education, warning that this is going to change, particularly for folks who maybe don't live in the community, but come on the weekends often to play, just so they know the system's changing, not just because you're sitting there, the first one sitting there queuing up doesn't mean you're the next one on the court as it is now.
And it doesn't have to be an hour. We can do half-hour slots. Obviously we can set up however we want it. Some places are half hour, some are 5 minutes, some are an hour. The hours seemed.
Hour.
Yeah.
I mean, for tennis, you can't do anything for less than an hour,
Okay, yeah,
really.
right. I'm fine with the hour slots.
Right. Well, thank you both Tims. Thank you for your work on this. All right. So that takes us.
Start disapproval to the end about it.
So we do need a vote.
Yes.
Okay. All right then.
Roll call?
Yeah, so we do, sorry, I said, so we do need a vote?
Yes.
All right, Rebecca, do you mind then doing the roll call for us?
I move to
I thought we were-
approve.
I
Second?
second.
All right, now, if Rebecca, will you do a roll call for us?
I'm still getting used to the setup. Commissioner Bodeman,
Yes.
Commissioner Kennick,
Yes.
Commissioner Rose.
Yes.
Commissioner Stoliar,
Yes.
Commissioner Hitchcock,
Yes.
Vice Chair Charlie,
Yes,
and Chair Miles is absent. Thank you. The motion passes.
excellent. All righty, now we're moving to the second item on the business items 5B. Discussion and possible approval of new general rules signage for town outdoor recreation facilities.
So again, a carryover from last meeting. We kind of presented some generic, general signs of what could be in our new general rules. And I was given direction from commission to basically work with a graphic designer to kind of update and solve some of our issues of people not having correct and adequate signage in the park. Tonight I have 5 different designs from a local Corte Madera graphic designer who worked closely with myself to produce some options. These signs will all be printed in color, will all be 12 by 18. This is the closest I got to get by the paper we have. This is 11 by 17, so a little bigger than this. Yeah, you can, sure. Rebecca, my computer doesn't like me. So these will all be mounted independently, freestanding, in all the outdoor facilities. And then once we get final approval tonight, we will then translate some of these into Spanish for certain parks that are needed for throughout the town. This is the first attachment. Do we go one by one, or do I go? What's easier for discussion? So, so there are 5 here. All took into account the request that we have from the last meeting with some signage, with some obviously things not allowed in the park, things allowed in the park. Each are a little different. But all pretty much have the same park rules, hours, I don't want to say the biggest offenders in the park, but the problems we have the most challenges with. And as we kind of did this, we kind of looked at a lot of these signs are already there. And the hope is that when we discuss later about locations, we're going to clean up a lot of duplicated signs so that it is a universal sign throughout all of Corte Madera. The only thing I noticed that is not on here is the QR code linking back to the where it is on the code and ordinance page will be added to all of these. That is the one thing that needs to be added to all of these. But everything else is pretty much, like I said, the rules and the challenges we have with both ourselves in Central Minnesota PD and enforcing people who don't follow the rules in the park. Do we do map and come back to which one they like? What's easier for, would they like to?
Figure out what we like first.
Okay. So,
Then
is that okay, or is that?
Yeah, let's take it in,
Okay.
so let's take it in 2 bits. So
Yeah.
then if any commissioners have any questions first, before we open it up for public comment on this first portion of the business item as to sort of the depictions of attachments 1A through 1E. Are there any questions about that?
I have 2 questions. One is there any data on whether something is more visible if it's negative space on positive or positive on negative in terms of readability? And then are we using the guidelines for having the size of the font and the color of the font against the background so that it's most visible for all abilities? Thanks.
Great question. I was going to ask a similar question. This has been run through legal for ADA compliance with respect to accessibility, I assumed.
It has. I think whatever the final design is will run through legal. If they have any tweaks to it, I think that'll be the final tweak. I think, like I said, just the QR code is the one that needed to be changed.
Sounds good. That's it for me.
I think at this point, I'm like, if these 5 designers are one, like we all like, hey, we really like 1A or 1C, whatever it is, or we really don't like those. And again, just full disclosure, colorblind. So the colors look great to me. They may look awful to you, but they don't look, I can't give input on it. So yeah, just full disclosure.
Enough. Any other potential
I just have a
questions?
quick question. I think I know the answer to it. On some of these printouts, it looks like there's a gray box on some of the icons, but I don't see them on that printed version, which makes me think that it's just a printer issue. For instance, the pets on a leash, the behind the dog has got a gray box on it. I'm guessing that's just a printer thing because I don't see it on this one. On 1A, the first icon in the upper left, it says pets on a leash and it's got a big gray thing on the I think it
I
might
see
be
that
a
too.
Photoshop thing. I think it was probably added because on one of them, it makes it a little bit more transparent, whatever lays on top of it. But I think it carried over into some of the other copies. Like for instance, 1D, I think it's supposed to be there. So the dark icon can be seen a little bit more maybe, or highlighted, but I think it carried over as a template into some of the other prints. So my suggestion is just leave the gray box off those. Not supposed to be there. Okay, I was just curious.
I have a quick question about the Spanish translations. It was on the points for what's being included. Are we still going with that for our requirement for our general park rules?
It will, once the final design is done, then they'll still translate. But it was very expensive to translate all 9. So it basically, let's design on one and then have her make the final translation.
And would all those translations be right under the English write-ups, or would it be like a QR code?
She can do both. They either can do under, or they could basically have a different sign that has both English and Spanish next to each other. That was my plan for like the town park areas, which we'll talk about later, where we have a lot of challenges there. Where like Skunk Hollow, we don't have that as or Granada or everything else. I think especially the Pixley median is our biggest challenge with language barrier and challenges with challenges with public who use it who don't understand the language.
If you have both languages, it's going to be very dense.
No, I'm talking 2 different signs next to each other.
No, but we were talking about, could you have a QR code or could it be right next to the thing? I wonder if a QR code is a better idea. You're saying there'll be 2 signs next to each other.
I can do a QR code. That's also easy. That would more favorable.
I think do too, so.
Okay.
All right, so is there any public comment? Rebecca, did you receive any emails or are there any raised hands?
I'm not seeing any raised hands, and we did not receive any emailed public comment.
Thanks, Rebecca. All right, then I'd like to bring it back to the commission for discussion, please. I think what we're looking for now is maybe people want to rank their ideas.
I like the idea of 2 columns rather than 3. I think it gets a little confusing to look at the 3. My eyes kind of spin. So I like the first or second.
I also like 1A and 1B for legibility. Question, is there a typo on recreation in the email address?
Yep.
And then the other one, facility rentals. What does it mean to say use facilities at your own risk? I guess, is that just standard language and we're assuming people can get hurt on like a picnic table?
Mhm.
Okay.
They can jump off of it.
Okay.
2-year-old can jump off.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. I was just kind of curious, like, is that based on something we've seen a lot? And then I guess if we wanted to really make things very straightforward for people, for facility rentals and inflatable / tents, do we want to put some kind of link or URL or information on like where you're supposed to be making reservations or getting approvals, or perhaps that goes in that section where you have the questions and concerns?
Well, in 1A, it has for questions reporting park concerns or obtaining a permit, it has the number there. So It is. being
Okay,
out
so
there, too.
you are supposed to either call or email. It's not like there's not like a link
No,
to
there's a multi-step
sign up.
process to reserve a facility.
Okay, got it. All right.
Depends which one they pick.
We also have one extra space between or firearms. Sorry. I'm very
Yep.
about the
Love that.
copywriting.
And in no destruction, property is injure without an E. And I wonder on the pets on leash, if it says at all times except in dog park. Is that the only place where they're allowed to run free?
That is correct.
Is that clearer than designated areas? Since there's only one?
I think if there's ever a second option, it might mean that we don't have to make new signs.
Well, and I guess my follow-up question is looking is like, do you want me to put the Muni code about pets off leash, since that's a big one, or do you want to the general Muni code and somewhere on here that they point to besides a QR code? You want a number that says, or it's just the QR code back to the Muni code? Okay.
For the thing,
For the pets off leash one, because right now, if you look at most signs of the park, well, the big ones are dogs off leash, and here's the Muni code. It's wrong. 'Cause it's been updated.
Municipal.
Municipal code,
Oh,
sorry, municipal code, sorry.
saying.
Municipal code has changed since then, so we need to change those signs anyway, but it literally, there's 3 signs in the park. Basically, it's the dogs off leash, the no glass allowed, and the no puncturing return. And they have 3 individual signs. They have each meaning that it municipal code that it points to. Now that we've changed them all, that's all big one, would it be helpful to have a general one on here somewhere, or after a couple specific ones that are higher challenges?
your call.
Okay.
I think it's a legal question. Yeah.
Okay. As long as
And-
there's somewhere they can point to it, say you're violating this code.
You were made aware of the code and you're violating it.
And the no glass, should that be prohibited throughout park or something like that?
I mean, it's the general park rules. I think it's. I'm indifferent. I can ask legal if that makes difference. It's.
And I had a question when I was walking around the park. I assume people are using the grills without reservations or anything like that. They just use them.
So we only take picnic reservations from Memorial Day to Labor Day. After that, it's a first come, first serve. So they can reserve it as part of their picnic area. Otherwise, it's a first come, first serve.
So if they are first come, first serve and they decide to grill hamburgers, what happens to the coals?
So there are receptacles that they put them in. And, oh, sorry, rewrite. They leave them. Sorry, I took my old job. They leave them in, they leave them there and Public Works goes and cleans them up.
Leave them in the grill.
There are
Okay.
no hot ash receptacles in the park.
Maybe there's needs to be guidance about that. That was it. his old
I know
job.
it is in our picnic reservations rules and guidelines. but
Yeah, I thought about the
general-
reservations, but I thought about the just. Thank
That's-
you.
That's potentially something that could be just posted adjacent to the few grill sites that are there instead of on the main.
So my thought on the inclusion of the codes, I like it. I mean, it might make it busy. But I would be concerned about inclusion of the codes only for certain ones, because I think the reference is that the others are recommendations only. And so if there is room for it, and this is obviously going to be bigger than what's before us, to have a small citation to whatever the applicable code is for the bottom for each, if that doesn't become too busy, then I would prefer that. I think it adds credence to this. I think it helps law enforcement when necessary. And if it's too busy or too busy on some of them, my vote would then be that they aren't on any of them and they be available linked to the QR code instead. And then while I'm talking, my preference is also for the first and second with the preference on 1A and 1B being the number 2.
Do we need to address picking up after your dog and where to put it?
It states to clean up pet waste. Under the pet zone.
I will say I was at a park.
And that it's supposed to go in the trash can because I checked with Mill Valley Refuse today, because I thought, do they want it to go in there? And yes, indeed, it's supposed to go in the trash.
I was at a park this week and I literally had a how-to video of how to. And a QR code linking to a video of how to. It was a little. It was a soccer complex, but it was like, I had to take a picture. I'm like, okay.
You don't want to make a video of that?
No, I didn't.
I also favor the first two visually and actually prefer 1B because of the contrast with the images, just the background contrasting with the text. I just find it a little bit more pronounced. The ones with 3 rows, I agree, are a little bit busy, particularly 1D, I feel like because it's a little bit monotone. The rules don't jump right out at you.
I'm leaning on jumping on the wagon. I also like 1A and 1B. I think the white really stands out. Also come, dusk. It's going to be a little bit easier if there's more white on there. And I think with 1B, I really like, except the circles are a little bit dark. It does create more contrast. I don't know if it would look any better using the green on 1C for it, but my first choice is 1A. And I love the logo up at the top, the green Mount Tam. Whoever designed that, they get my vote. That's great design.
I agree that 1A I think is the most eye-catching for the general park rules, that segment. I think it's really important that it's up there because it will get people to look, I think. I think compared to 1B, which I like the layout, but I think it's super important to have that backdrop or something behind the general park rules. I think that it catches the eyes and then it will kind of inclines you to look at everything else. I think I also like the symmetry of 1A and how, I don't know what's going to happen. We have to include QR codes and additional information or whatnot. But I think that with whatever we choose, I think it's really important that the general park rules have a backdrop of something eye-catching like 1A. So that's why 1A is my favorite.
Right. Well, if I can, anything else from any of the commissioners?
That's a question. If the egret came out of the bottom of 1A and the QR code went there, would that look weird?
No.
I don't think so. I think that might actually be the perfect spot for it.
Great. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yep. Then if there's no further comment, I'm wondering if anybody would care to make a motion for, I think it sounds like proposal of 1A, subject to typos corrected and evaluation of whether the municipal codes can be included on all or none. Replacement of the egret with a QR code. Anybody wanted to make such a motion? Thank you so much. Is there a second?
Second.
Great. Rebecca, will you please have roll call for us?
Commissioner Budeman,
Yes.
Commissioner Kennick,
Yes.
Commissioner Rose,
Yes.
Commissioner Stoliar,
Yes,
Commissioner Hitchcock,
Yes.
Vice Chair Charlie,
Yes.
and Chair Miles is absent. Thank you. Motion passes.
Super. Thanks. And thanks for that work, Tim.
Great.
Lovely that it was such a resounding, we liked the first two best. That made it easy. All right.
And I didn't put it in before. I just laid them out as I got them. I didn't.
Sure.
No preference.
You didn't tell us which one.
No, I didn't. Like I said. So the second part of the staff report is we had kind of looked at where to place some signs. When we kind of did the walk around, we found out there was kind of a piecemeal. Obviously, people had put signs in places where there were repeat offenders or challenges, but they were kind of all over the board. Some were in the ground, some were on signs, some had pretty designs. So it was kind of a hodgepodge. What we have in the second part is an idea of where we could put signs in each park. A lot of times there are already signs there, so we'd be cleaning up and removing some signs. Obviously, I'll be working very closely with Public Works to figure out how we're going to install them, where they're going to install them, and what they'll all look like. The rough estimate is about $250 per sign is the estimate we've kind of given, from printing to some cement work and the pole, and then Public Works is going to install them all for us, but that's about the per sign. So first up, you have Town Park. I kind of gave it. Oh, sure. Okay. Okay. If you can. Yeah, sure, that works. Does that work out for everybody for us? So quite a few of these already currently signs. Yeah, sure, missing the bottom. Signs 1, signs 2, signs 3, all currently have some sort of signage there. We were looking at just basically updating and cleaning it up. Looking at sign 4 and sign 5, 6, and 7, or at least let's go 4 and 5, are our probably two biggest offenders of people who bring bounce houses, bring in past large groups, don't follow the park rules, and there currently isn't great signage there. Even though they may sign off on the picnic permit, there really isn't a spot where they see it. Location 5 and location 7 and 8, which is kind of that Pixley median, is probably our biggest challenge. We get the most complaints and concerns from residents of people who are partying till midnight. They don't follow the rules. PD comes out. There's no real way to say, hey, here's stop doing what you're doing. So some additions, some signs there for that reason. Just because that is obviously the biggest concern we've had from local residents who live both right at that across the street of the complex there and down the street. Location 6 was a natural entrance to the park. Location 9, also another entrance to the park where people have some signs ready. We would clean that up. And then we looked at locations 10, 11, and 12 are basically other entrances to the park. 10, a lot of people walk on that path from the lagoon and come to the park that way for soccer games or whatever else. And then obviously location 11 is you're coming off the Mill Clemens campus, you're parking in the school, you're walking in the park. Right now there's just the dogs off leash and I believe the glass on the bottom. And then location 12 is coming off the path on the low canal footbridge that has like I said, the two main signs, dogs off leash and the glass containers for town park. I kind of would like to go park by park. If there's things like I really think I missed something as town park, then we should add one or change one. In this process, I think with Public Works, we're going to go through and clean up all the signs of where they are and get reduced signs that don't make sense. We're very conscious of, too many signs in the park and want it to look cleaner and nicer. And I think that's one big project we'll do in 5. But are there any locations in town park that, hey, I missed or you really think need an extra sign or one can be removed of those 12 signs?
I think my initial reaction is that's a lot of signage for that little area that you were addressing. I now understand that that's been a need and it is the closest to the residents. So I do kind of see it. I was wondering if maybe we could just drop one of them off. It's not that big of an area and you've got 3 of them there with 2 on the opposite side with the tennis court. I'd maybe suggest to maybe free one up and maybe put another one over by the toilets by the softball field. I think it's not necessarily only a entrance or exit to the park, but also as a point of reference if somebody's breaking the rules, that somebody can just say, look, there's a sign right over there, as opposed to you got to go all the way over to the other side to read it. So that's just my input.
Is the island reservable?
A teaser is we'll discuss obviously in the next item about some capital stuff. There's some challenges there that we're kind of reducing some of the issues that are there besides the park signage.
So it's a free for all at this point.
It's very easy for people to drive up and unload their equipment. Yes. Is it helpful to see the photos of each location, or is this map? I mean, obviously, if you're familiar with the park and you've been in a lot of these, all make sense. I tried to at least, see space.
I agree with Tim that putting something right next to the new bathroom.
Okay.
Just seems to make sense because it's a focal point
Sure.
now, and so whether that means sign 1 shifts over or there's an addition, like you suggested from the median, but I do think it makes sense.
Something.
People come and go via that, so it's an easy access point for them to see the rules.
I mean, selfishly, I was thinking, you know, if we didn't do one of these signs, we did some type of locked board that had the signs and maybe upcoming events because people see it a lot. Maybe that's a different than just a sign. It's like, hey, here's what's coming up or running. Maybe that's a better fix for looking nice to the building, just a whole. I mean, if that's clear that we want something there, then we can make that, you know, correction. I guess my question is of the three in the Pixley median, what would we'd like to get rid of the one that's in the middle there where the actual picnic area is, the drop-in picnic area, or one of the two? Correct. I mean, if I look at it, I would probably remove the one closer to the skate park since you have a sign across the street as you enter the park, and then leave the one kind of, well, the park playground is the same issue. You're right across the street from the playground. I could be open for.
I would say 5 or 8. I mean, they're both close to another signage that you can see one from the other. So either of those, maybe keep the
There's
sun from
one
them.
side of the median that tends to
Now,
gather more people.
they're both about the same. I think one's a little larger. I think most of the playground's a little larger, but there's more shade towards the skate park.
I would think removing 7 and pulling 8 down a little bit so it's staggered with the 5, 6, 8, 9. So you look left, you look right. All you see is rules. No. And I do like, I know we sort of blazed right through the question component. Sounds like we're doing a little bit of a combination. So if we're chatting about it as well, I might want to just check in with Rebecca and see if there's been any public comment.
No, we have not received any emailed public comments and no raised hands.
Perfect. Anyone in the audience care to comment? All right. Okay. Then, sorry, commissioners, I just want to make sure we took that into account. So my thought would be removing 7, maybe moving 8 a tiny bit down. I do hear what you're saying, Tim, about the bathroom and the signage area there. And that resonates, but also I just, doing that lap as I do many times every week, it kind of depends on where you end up finding a parking spot. If you do, where you exit, if you see a sign and you're sort of getting where you're going. And so that seems potentially like another logical spot. And also people see it when they go to the bathroom. The only other thing I was thinking is, I don't know how best to describe this, at the corner where the tennis and pickleball courts are, it's a little bit within where the path sort of takes a left, right? If you're walking in number 6, and then you walk out and then the path takes a left. I'm wondering if it is helpful because something you said about having a point of reference, something to point to. And maybe Commissioner Rose also mentioned not having to walk all the way to one side or another. If having a sign at that juncture where the path takes a left means that there is some signage, at least a little bit in the middle of the park for people to look at in case they were desperate for a refresher. Instead of 6. No, I think 6 is an important one there, but I'm not sure. Well, maybe, I don't know. I'm not as facile with that area of where if you can come in and not go as far as the location I'm talking about. If you have to, if you're funneled in through that point, then maybe it is nice to have it a little further in. But I do see having the signs at points where people are entering into the park or highly trafficked seems to make the most sense. So then
I'd imagine 6 is going to be increased with the skate park and pickleball, but there's going to be a lot.
exactly. And so I feel like they might miss it as they're running in at 6, and having another refresher right there might be helpful. And then the question I had about 11 is that it seems odd to have nothing all over that entire area, but it isn't really well, maybe it is a point of entrance. I guess people do park over there and then come in that way. Is the sign going to be on both sides, or I'm just wondering where the placement of the sign is, right?
It would go where the current one is, and it's like just off the blacktop there on the town property in the grass. So we can put it both ways. We make it a dual-sided sign.
Okay, I was going to say, like, depending on where they're coming in, they might be coming into the back of the sign then. Okay. All right. I don't know, what does anybody think about or that extra location I was just talking about? I'm not sure if I described it very well.
I definitely understand the thought. I fear there might be a lot of signs that nobody looks at any of them.
Right.
Mhm.
It's just- the Park, it's natural, it's beautiful, you know, you have to be mindful of that, but I do understand your thought on it. I guess I suppose you could just shift 6 feet towards in the path where you had to park and actually walk a few steps before you hit it, which is tennis on the right, skate park, pickleball. Or tennis on the left, skate park, and I don't know. It's a compromise of the two, but that's an important.
I had another quick question. I know it was pushed off, but I think at some point there is talk of adding permanent bathrooms over towards the playground. Do we know roughly where that would be? No, it hasn't. Okay.
I would assume it'd be another community outreach progress like we did the last.
Gotcha. Okay. I was just thinking if, I mean, it makes sense to have signage wherever that future spot might be.
That sign that is on the tennis courts fence is at the end of its useful life, so it really does need to be upgraded. There was mention of adding a more formal entry on the west side of the park. And I wonder if that would make a difference in terms of if you see where you're entering instead of one of the many ways that people might go in, if that's where the sign goes at the new main entry.
Yeah, I honestly don't see very many people come in that entrance. They usually come in the parking lot and either go straight to the tennis court, pickleball, or field, or they park by the community center and go wherever they're going. I think unless you're parking far away and walking, or you're walking to the park, you might not come through that. I don't know. I think yes, the tennis court needs to be replaced the same time to replace or add one to the bathroom. It's definitely reached its life cycle. My only concern is with 7 is that is currently where a drop-in picnic area is. So if people are going to have picnics, then maybe it's not this sign, it's a picnic rule sign that goes there. I don't know. I just said that's a place people gather to have picnics. I'd want somebody to say, here's kind of the rules for the park.
Maybe there needs to be a second design. Well, we were talking about for the hot coals.
Yeah.
So something small that's specific to the picnic things that's mounted on the table or on the side of the grill, or, you know, something that's much smaller than this, but that's a reminder of park rules or the pertinent ones to the
Picnic areas.
space. And then that references the hot.
I mean, I could do that, and I also could do something where they could. Right now, we staple the picnic reservation signs to the tables. Maybe it's a combination of both, and that slides and says you have the picnic table reserved, and then also here are the picnics rules for the.
Adding on to that, I agree that maybe 7 could be moved to where the trees are adjacent to the Corte Madera Town Park tennis courts. I see so many picnics happening there, and I think that's a spot that should be addressed. And I also have another question for maybe you guys agree with the sign. Looking at Neil Cummins in that top right corner on the rectangle, there's another entrance there to the park that can lead you right into the grassland. I don't know if it's necessary to put any kind of signage there, but it is another possible point of entry, maybe something to consider.
Where are you talking about?
Right here, because there's another fenced entrance.
Ah, I got it.
I don't know if that's something to consider, but I just thought I'd mention it.
So yeah, I'm not quite sure what to do on this one. I know we have to have a vote. So my thought is if I hadn't heard that the medium was such a big problem, I would have said, let's go down to 1 there instead of 3. But I'm feeling, you know, being guided by what you know is going on. Do we all think, like maybe in bits and pieces, does everybody have any thoughts about 1, 2, or 3 signs on the medium and what seems right to you?
I just went walking there yesterday and it's a very long parcel, so I could make a case for 3.
This assumes that it's lack of knowing the rules that
Yeah.
causes the problem. Because just because you have 3 signs doesn't necessarily mean it's going to change behavior. I feel like 3 is probably too many. I would probably go down to 2 and space them out more, kind of like what Emily had suggested.
I would agree.
I agree.
Okay.
2 is probably practical.
I agree too. Too.
Okay, then we've got, assuming that the idea is that we've got 11 or 12 signs with which to play. So we've got one sign that we want to, at least we know one sign that we're thinking we want to shimmy somewhere else. Any strong feelings, guys, between, I've heard 3 potential new spots, one up at the top near Neil Cummins, one by the bathroom, and one a little bit inward from the tennis courts. Any additional thoughts on those? Any strong feelings?
I think by the bathrooms is probably the most appropriate spot. I think the Neil Cummins entry, I think then we also get into that's kind of Neil Cummins property at some point. There's a line. I do know people park there and use the park all the time, but I think 11 should be able to cover that whole entranceway. So my vote's for the bathroom.
All right.
I agree.
Any other thoughts on that? If not strong feelings, mediocre feelings?
I guess the other part is, do we keep 1 also? Does this replace 1 or does it in addition to? I'm impartial.
I know you could place it sort of between the bathroom and 1, and therefore there's 1 sign, or put it on I don't think it needs to be necessarily on the other side of the bathroom, but I'd defer to you for design purposes.
Yeah, from my point, as long as if 1 is shifted a little to kind of cover both those areas, because I think that's how it's used a lot, that parking area, I'm fine with that as well. I just think if 1 is left where it is, we've got this large area near the bathrooms that is just highly used, and people enter the park, not necessarily even at the actual pathways, just anywhere. So I would think they might not see it. But if 1 is shifted over, that works for me too.
We could shift 1 further to the dog park. That's something who's turned in going that way down the pathway a little bit, and then. Okay.
Mhm.
Hard to tell from the map at where 1
It's in that little.
So 1 is, the original was where the current, kind of see the current sign there. It's kind of hard to zoom in on that picture. I apologize. So you could do it a little further down the pathway. But there is also another sign already in Town Park when you pull into the center island there. So yes, you could move it down to the right a little bit so that it's as you enter that pathway there.
I think we meant move it to the left.
Sorry, move it left.
So
Sorry.
it's closer to the
Yeah.
bathroom.
But you're right, then people that are going to the dog park, maybe they don't see it. I don't know.
I think if there's concern for that, if we did shift it to the left
Mhm.
towards the bathroom, 1 could potentially argue that 12 could be moved closer to the dog park and capture people entering from both sides, because there's just 1 entry from 12.
Right.
And so people are going to carry on that path typically.
That's true.
And actually, that also favors the people. There's a picnic area right there
There's a
too.
picnic
So it's
area.
a little more visible to that area too, a little more central.
Fold down a little bit and move 1.
Yeah, say like closer to the dog park entrance and that picnic ground. I think it's a great idea.
And like I said, this is all good information. They don't need to vote on final design, but I'll work with Public Works to figure out.
Good.
But this is
Good.
very helpful when we have this next step.
All right, so we're removing 7, spacing out 5 and 8, moving 12 towards the dog park and 1 a little bit towards the bathroom.
Yep.
Right, and then we've reduced 1 sign, which I'm fine, yeah, I'm fine with, but if we had a vision of 12, then we have 1 with which still to play, and if not, then we're down to 11.
And the actual, if you think about it, if we change 4 to more of rules for picnics, then you wouldn't have the general park rules. You'd have a more picnic specific sign that would address the Coles, the bounce houses, that kind of stuff that happen a lot there.
I think that would actually be really helpful.
Okay.
Have something at the site where people rent or use as first come, first serve. That's specific to what they're doing, which is totally different than playing a soccer game or
Right.
taking your dog to the dog park.
So we could get rid of 4 generic and make it a more picnic specific.
Great. All right. Any other discussion from the commission? All right, hearing none. All right, next one, next part.
We did the biggest park first. It's easier downhill for me. So Cove has currently 2 signs. One on the entrance, obviously by the baseball field, and one on the other entrance by the bathroom. Both are older signs that need to be cleaned up. But those are the 2 places to replace them with as they entered, obviously, the field there. And then anybody who parks on the backside to enter the sand volleyball pit or use the bathroom for those 2 locations. Any thoughts or about changing, adding those capture as people walk in? I don't know how many people in the blacktop walk to the field. I don't see a lot. I see more people who park in the lot, either want to kind of walk onto the baseball field or the sand volleyball pit or the
Yeah, so the main points of access are, I think, number 1, as you've indicated, the walkway from the neighborhood that's not pictured on this park is a major entrance into the area.
It's behind.
backside. Okay, kind of like where the proposed new
Stack.
And so I would say we found a home for that removed number 7. I think a lot less people are coming in from and this number 2. In fact, I actually think that there's signage if you're coming from the street and entering into the park volleyball court that says it's for like school staff and whatnot. So I don't think this is a highly used parking area over here. So people aren't necessarily entering from that way. If they're coming, they're entering in from the community pathways, which are not pictured on this and to the left. So for me, number 1 is sure. Number 2, I would move over to capture people that are coming in from the neighborhood. And I think one of the main entrances is not on here at all, is right behind home plate. Boy, I don't know baseball. Embarrassing. It's actually.
It's not
Yeah.
right behind. It's to the left. But yeah.
I actually thought you were talking about an entrance that's near the sand volleyball court where the community garden is going in, because there's another walkway coming in from there. Is that the one you were talking about, or the home plate?
No, that's the one I was saying we should move number 2 over, because I don't think that's capturing really many people there. And then an additional one at the little archway that comes from the street that enters in maybe near.
I also just wanted to add, what was also not included is there's also another grill area. So if we're considering those picnic signages for town park plan, we should also think of putting that there as well, because I know they also have a grill there, right next to the volleyball courts. Just a little something to add.
Never see that one used, but I do see the one closer to number 1. That's used. I know too. That's a good point.
I do think any of the picnic signage should be on every picnic spot that across all the parks.
It's not, but it will be.
Yeah.
Any other questions on this one? And, Rebecca, I think I asked sort of just an open-ended question. If there are any public comments with respect to the location at all, maybe we don't have to take it park by park.
I am not seeing any raised hands, and we did not receive any emailed public comments.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. I think we were most concerned about signage here, obviously, because it's a greatly used community park for a lot of events. My first proposal was to put one kind of that main entrance there next to the Piccolo Pavilion. I think kind of putting it near the old historic signs would kind of look a little odd. I think once you enter the park and you park, that's where most people kind of come in and see Obviously, we don't have a huge problem, but it is if we're going to make a general sign for all our parks to add. The only other entrance I was thinking about was up on top there as you come down the stairs. But again, as many of you know, this is a big discussion of possibly revamping of Menke Park in the next year, so it might change. But I think at least some sign on the front next to gazebo say, when you enter the park, please follow these rules, would make the most sense, because I don't know if the pathway will stay or change or obviously that process. So,
And I think it's small enough that one is.
Yeah.
sufficient. We don't need more than.
Works for me.
good. Granada Park, my plan was to place it where it currently is located next to kind of the garbage sorting bins as you kind of pull in there. I think that's where most people kind of enter right now to use the pickleball / tennis courts. If there's any future development, either on the left or right side, we could talk about adding some more, but I think that's kind of the general main point there. And then we would also add, there are some picnic areas of the general picnic rules of those picnic areas, you know. It is obviously first come, first served, they're not reservable, but again, the same general picnic. Questions on?
Nope. Seems reasonable to me.
Skunk Hollow, same kind of thing. I think just a nice sign we enter that main entrance there would make the most sense. Just as people enter in to see the park, just some general rules. We have not had complaints of people having loud parties or stuff here in the past, but it is just, again, add a general rule when you walk in the front of the gate.
When I went to Skunk Hollow, I was looking to make sure I was at Skunk Hollow, and the sign was after you finished walking through the park. So should it be near the entry?
The current Skunk Hollow sign?
Mhm. I don't even know if it was visible from the street. I didn't notice it till I was walking through the park.
It was put there. I mean,
Well,
I think
looking
they
at,
like the hidden gem.
sorry, no, I was gonna say, if you look at the location that you had up, is the sign there?
Zoom up on. It's actually when you walk past the gate, I believe. Patty, is that correct? Yeah, I believe you walk past the gate and then the sign's there. Don't know.
You maybe can see it better.
Yeah.
Got
Right.
it. Yeah, yeah.
Right.
All right. And so where the current sign is that where you're talking about putting the replacement sign?
That was one of the options, yes. It might hide a little better, or it could be in the front. I really think it should be when you enter the park, outside, but I understand this is a highly visible and I can't see the color. I believe the sign is to the left. It looks like it's out of,
Yeah.
yeah.
that's-
So basically there would be the place. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
All right.
Again, the brown, green, I can barely see.
All right. Well, in any event, it sounds like one sign is
Yeah.
totally sufficient. Near at the entrance makes sense to me. If there's any other comments. All right.
Great.
Tim, do you have what you need?
I do. Thank you.
Excellent. Then thank you very much. All right. So I think that brings us to the last. No, I don't think we're doing a vote. We're not doing a vote on locations, right? Nope. Great. All right. So then that brings us to the last business item, which is a mouthful. It's the preliminary, pardon me?
Sorry about
No.
that.
Preliminary discussion and direction to staff regarding potential projects to be elevated from the facility's master plan for possible inclusion in the 2025 work plan, with final project recommendations to be brought to the commission for final review and approval at the December 2nd, 2024 commission meeting.
Sorry, Brad. I'm sorry. So a little bit of background. So I think last year when the master plan got approved, we were kind of rushed and only really have a lot of time to discuss like what do we really want to bring to town council for next year. That's why we're kind of starting the discussion tonight to say, hey, you know, we spent a lot of time on that master plan. Let's use it correctly. And I think that what out of tonight is I want to basically identify some projects and then come back next and have a further discussion. So last year in December, we kind of laid out how the process was going to work. So basically, we're working with all the commission to say, look at the master plan, figure out in the fall what items we think need to be elevated to the next level, and really counting on input and discussion tonight, and obviously in December from commission about what should be in the work plan. Let's figure out what we can accomplish, what we want to accomplish, and what are our dreams and projects for next year. Basically, we'll talk about it tonight. We'll talk about it again in December. And then basically I will bring this to the strategic planning workshop with town council of items that commission feels passionate about. They will make some decisions on what projects they want to elevate to the work plan. I'll come back and report back on here are the things we're going to work on this year. And then my next step is to work with Public Works and Finance to figure out how do we accomplish it? How do we pay for it? How do we get it done? And then these projects can be simple projects or projects that are multi-year, but things that commission is passionate about going forward. Just a short little recap. In 23-24, we had a list of things we kind of tackled. Some big AD issues in the park, the really enhanced field maintenance in Town Park for both the athletic fields of East and West Field, improvements to the Town Park softball, baseball fields, grease interceptor to community center to commercial dishwasher, pickleball at Granada Park, the new courts at Town Park, which hopefully will open in about 2 weeks. And then some fencing of the skate park renovation, which will open hopefully early in 2025. At the annual cast commission meeting, we were tasked with an ad hoc committee, worked with Commissioner Stoller and Commissioner Budeman to kind of figure out how do we have this discussion. It was very much a education and enlightening and focus in that we really want to make sure that the discussion tonight's around things that we want to elevate. Out of that discussion, we really realized that let's take the time to look at an equity lens of all these facilities. So whatever we throw out tonight, I'll come back in December and say, look, here's what we're looking at, Town Park, Menke, Cove, whatever else. So you can kind of look at it either a pie chart or graph to say, we're asking for this or we're elevating this. So we looked at addressing many issues at all the parks. So we really took the time to make sure that was something we really wanted to work. And that will be, I said, we'll bring back in the December meeting. What I'm basically looking for tonight is to kind of go through each park and kind of the near term, long term, and as funding allows of things that we want to discuss further at the next year. But really take the time to dive in and figure out what's important to the community, what you've heard, what you've seen, and then obviously do some more work before the council meeting or the commission meeting in December. Ad hoc committee will meet again to kind of go over that kind of stuff and then bring it back for final approval before the.
All right. Thank you. So first, is there any questions from the commissioners before we open up for public comment?
I had a couple questions. One is there a version that has these items numbered so that they would be like TP1, TP2, TP3, and we would be able to refer to them easier?
There is not. They're only in the near term or ongoing or as maintenance as allowed. That's how.
So if in the final or in the next one, we could have them numbered, that would be really helpful. And then is there information from last year of what were the near term that were accomplished and the near term that weren't accomplished? That would be interesting to be able to look at what carried over.
I think everything that, since we were a very short window, got accomplished or tasked in some way, shape, or form. I think the only ones that aren't on here, there was support like either for the seniors, enhanced senior facilities, or didn't make the list. I think the only thing that's still on here that you'll see in December is the Memorial Bench Program that will come back to you in December before it goes to council for the December 17th meeting. But most everything else I think was addressed in one way, shape, or form. At least the high ADA efficiencies that Public Works could tackle right away that were the highest risk.
Well, kudos to staff. That's wonderful that you make a list and then it's done. Also the items that were listed on here, it would also be helpful if we had any idea, like I was looking at the pavilion at Menke Park and there was a question of painting and I thought, is it dirty? Does it need pressure washing or does it need painting? When was it last painted? So we don't really have a frame of reference of how much time has gone by. And I don't know if there's a record of that. If there's no record of it, forget it. But that's the kind of thing that I used to look at as a manager. Thank you.
I think in my learning of the park signs, there's not great record keeping of when stuff has been changed or modified or updated. I think the newer things, but couldn't tell you last time it was painted. And I can ask about the work. I'm not sure they would do it there. But I definitely can take this others and find out.
Just so I'm clear, everything that's in this spreadsheet now is what we left.
Everything's in the spreadsheet is what the consultants originally evaluated when they did the facilities master plan. So they listed every facility and things that could be addressed. Some of these have been addressed, some of these haven't. But it was everything possible that at that time they saw as a deficiency or a challenge with the facilities.
Not the comprehensive original plan that shows the status of, I think maybe that's a little bit what Patty suggested.
No, it is not.
What if we had the original plan and then a column that lets us know completed, or like a status column? We can see what progress we've made at the parts, or what's like almost done. Because I think I think the historical context is really helpful, just to know where we've already invested in that last year timeframe and.
I can definitely work with Public Works on things that are either have been done or are working on. I think some of the stuff I listed are the things that they knocked off the list with the short time that they had last year when they kind of did the turnaround. So I think this is the first year we've actually had the time to think this out. And I think if that's helpful to the commission, then I definitely can work with Public Works to add a third column, say, where is it? What's the update? Maybe not to when the last time Binky was painted, but it would be helpful to say, yeah.
I also agree with Patty that it would be also helpful to like number each line item so that we can track how are we organizing each of these rows. And remind me, what does it mean when there's just no cost listed? I think we talked about this last year too, but I can't remember.
The time the consultant did this, they didn't have an associated cost with it. So they said, obviously, depending if it changes, obviously a project we started maybe respect out 2 years ago, obviously it's going to increase or change, but it basically would have to go back out and figure out some type of anticipated costs, depending on scope of project.
I don't know, maybe I missed it. How does the budget compare for this upcoming year compared to this year? Are we looking around the same amount? Because that might give us guidance on big ticket items versus more reasonable. Still pending on that?
Ask for like historical year-over-year comparison, just as a point of reference,
Right.
not necessarily, as Tim said, not guiding what we choose to bring forward as our recommendation, right?
Right. I don't think before this year we had this much breakdown of what we had done year to year. This is, I mean, last year's kind of our benchmark to start, and then this year with actually building off that. And I think that's where we'll be in the years. Right.
But I also think that that shouldn't mean we don't look at big ticket things, considering that be multi-year, because we can't ignore the big things.
I think the general guidance is just getting on paper what the commission supports.
A wish list.
And then by the time we get to the town council goal setting workshop in January, I think the town manager and the finance director will have a better idea of what we're looking at, or even if not, that gets pared down, but then they have a prioritized list
Right.
of what we focus on with whatever they determine the available funding is. And if it ends up being a larger ticket item, we need to be cognizant of the fact that a certain percentage of that will be taken out of this year and then reserved for the following year and the year after if it's a 2 or 3 year project. So it may mean that you get a longer term project accomplished or on the road to getting started, and then 1 or 2 smaller ticket items or deficiencies, or not embark on a longer term project and tackle more small projects.
I also had a question about the intergenerational center. Is that categorized or is it on its own thing? And the same with the island. When we listed all of the parks, maybe the island should be listed as something that needs addressing in terms of signage or lighting or safety or something. Maybe it should exist.
So as far as the intergenerational, it's on its own. It wasn't, this was just on facilities we currently work. So it wasn't a facility that was there. I think it's a separate discussion, obviously, that council's gonna look at the ad hoc committee that's subformed for council. I think the Pixley median is on this, but I think it's obviously a discussion of if staff decides there's some changing to be made there, how's that addressed? So it is definitely on there. There's some talk about realigning some parking or making some other improvements up there that could enhance that area and deal with some of the challenges that staff is dealing.
I wanted to quickly bring up, I hope this isn't getting too ahead, but just for Cove Park plans and the different action plans for that park, not to be biased, but for the community garden project that I do work on, I think that because there's an easement with the town, there's a lot that we could do and accomplish on our behalf, which also, so like I saw the memorial benches, we're already planning on putting benches, we could do that. And that would also accomplish our goal here. And if we already, because we have our outside funding already, sure, for some projects that could be helpful, but either way, that could be pretty insured to get completed, as well as removing the vegetation by the parking lot. That is something we could easily do on behalf of us, because it is our goal to have a regenerative habitat and just et cetera, et cetera. That asphalt repair, we already have to trench under that asphalt path. Just putting that out there, that collaboration could really help us accomplish a lot of those goals in a more timely manner and in a secure.
Are you speaking about collaboration with Refugia Marin or with your Redwood High School botany group, or a combination of the two?
I speak on behalf of the project, so I guess in those terms, yes, Refugia Marin and the Redwood, but I would probably stress most on the Refugia Marin because that's the most stable, ongoing insurance there.
And items like that are the skate parks, prime example. That wasn't the work plan. There wasn't a huge amount of cost to the town, but it wasn't the work plan to be accomplished during that. So I would assume that would be something in the work plan, but not as much of a cost on the budget.
So if there, are there any more commissioner questions before we open it up for public comment?
I just have one quick question for the rehabilitation of East Athletic Fields, including grading. It's about $1 million. So it says East Athletic Fields.
Which number? Just joking.
It is on the first page.
Just joking, there's no number.
Town Park. It would be 2. Sorry, I'm just kidding. So it's, yeah, this the second line item down on the whole list. My question is does this, so the way that it's always been described is there's West Field and an East Field. Does this include both of them because it's fields, or this is just the East Field,
correct.
which is the in between the basketball and the tennis courts, correct?
No, that's the
No.
West.
That's the West. All right, sorry. Okay. The West Field is the more used one by Madeira Gardens.
That's the East Field.
That's the East Field.
That's the
Sorry.
East Field. Got it. Okay.
That's the one big.
And I think
All
they,
right.
I think
Makes
they
sense.
said fields because it would be like, it could be a lacrosse field, it could be a softball, it could be a soccer field, it could be many things.
Gotcha.
But that is that patch,
It's
yes, from that
private.
kind of that berm where the picnic table is all the way to the block.
Makes sense. Okay. Thanks for the clarification.
All right. Then any public comment? Seeing public comment, please invite you up.
Good evening, Vice Chair, Commissioners, staff. My name is Clark Miller. I am on the board of Corte Madera Football Club, and I'm speaking tonight on behalf of the 1,100 players and families part of our soccer club. And nice to see some new faces and some old faces. I wanted to be here to commend you on the master planning process over the last 18 plus months that we've participated rigorously in it. I thought the process was very extensive, exhaustive, inclusive. And through that process, I was pleased that through many members of our club's rankings that we had a very strong turnout for that item that Commissioner Rose just mentioned, particularly the rehabilitation of the east field, which includes regrading. It includes repairing the drainage on it, leveling it, irrigating it properly. And it was through that rigorous process that I thought rose highly to the top of the list. And it was addressed as an item that was addressing a deficiency, which is true. And we've worked closely with Public Works to have an interim plan to address those deficiencies through an enhanced maintenance program. However, there are just fundamental inherent deficiencies with the field. It was originally a park. We recognize that, but to be an athletic field and to be a safe facility that is welcoming, not just to soccer, but lacrosse, rugby, touch football, flag football, so many other sports, it does need to be rehabilitated in the way that it's proposed here. And so I'm here to urge you to please prioritize that. While it's been 18 plus months of participating in this process, it has been several years that Corte Madera Football Club has been advocating for this. I think we've been very patient over those years. Our club ranks continue to grow, and I think it's an opportunity to not just address these deficiencies, but also to find opportunities to grow the local economy through having additional events, additional players, additional visitors to the area. And I think it's hopefully one of your favorite things about Corte Madera is mine to see all these kids, the Corte Madera players, particularly wearing their red jerseys on Saturdays and Sundays, filling the fields through the fall. Those fields do get closed down in the winter because those fields are not properly draining and to preserve them for the spring and summer. And so again, the rehabilitation of these fields, doing it the proper way, will allow for more year-round events on that field, broaden the aperture of who can play on them, broaden the opportunity economically. Lastly, at the end of last year, as we were going through this process, there was about, I believe, $70,000 that was earmarked from last year's budget. There was excess money left over to do some preliminary design and engineering for the East Field. We've shared contacts and references with Public Works to initiate that work for several months now. And I don't know that has actually been acted upon yet, and I would be interested to know if the commission or staff is aware of that. But that seems like an excellent way to kickstart this process and get the work going. It also, lastly, would say that it is a very large number at $1 million as a preliminary estimate. I think it would be wise to think about breaking that into two segments. We recognize that that's a very large amount to request in a single budget year. But if it was broken into 2 years, I think that might make more sense. And the club is very willing to participate through fundraising and perhaps assigning a portion of dues to contribute to the overall cost of this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Rebecca, are there any other public comments by email or raised hands?
There were no additional raised hands and no emailed public comments on this item.
All right, thank you. Then I'm going to bring it back to the commission for any further discussion.
I'll start. I feel strongly that we've had lengthy discussions regarding our fields for years, as Mr. Miller commented, and there has been resounding support at times, and I feel this is an opportunity to take action and really elevate this matter that serves so many people in the community, to actually put it as a high priority, get it done.
I agree.
I completely agree. I think that they have been very, very patient. It is a big ticket item. I think that at the very least, what we can do is figure out a way that we could maybe phase it out. I'm not sure how that's really possible. You don't really do half a field, right? But I think that it is a must. I'm really, really pleased with how the fields have survived 1,100 somewhat kids in tournaments. I walk by there every day and I live in the neighborhood. I don't think it's enough. We need to think long term, and I think it's time to start moving in that direction.
Yeah, I have the same note as the breakup possible, because it's an important thing. I mean, I really think we have full support in the importance of rehabilitating the fields, but there is this big ticket number, and how do we get to it? But this is the time to do these sort of long-term plannings. So I'm in favor of exploring ways to break it up so that we can get to it like, let's start it right, sooner than later. If we have to take it in chunks because there is the reality of money, then let's explore how to do that in an efficient way. My mother used to say, we're too poor to be cheap. So sometimes you break something up and it ends up being more expensive long-term. So a really thoughtful way to piece this out that we can still capitalize on keeping at this number, not expanding it too much, but maybe making it something that we can get to.
I'm new to the commission, so when Mr. Miller mentioned that I know this is a park and not an athletic field, I'd like some more explanation of that. Are we trying to make a silk purse out of a sow's ear? So that's one of my questions. And the other is when I did my walk around at all the parks, I tried to stop some of the people that were there, and I asked a family watching soccer, so is the field a problem? And this was west. And they said, no, actually, we live in Mill Valley, and Friends Field is what we usually are playing on. And this is as good, almost as good, or as good as what we've got in Mill Valley. So I thought, oh, well, that surprises me, because I've been hearing for at least 2 years the problems of the fields in Corte Madera. So if somebody can give me an easy explanation about the athletic field level versus park level.
I've got my 2 cents on that. I think so. Back in the day when the grass was originally planned, it wasn't meant to be a athletic turf. It was a recreational type of grass. And I'm no expert by no means, but there are some different grades of grass which are more designed, more durable, and drainage is more effective, that can allow the field to stay open a lot longer during winter. So the idea is that we take out the recreational grass and put something that would be athletic worthy, more durable.
I'll speak to, I think it's also just the grading of the field. The field is not level. I mean, it just shifts, it moves. And that's the biggest challenge. The east field is a sand-based field and the west field is a clay-based field. So they're different type of fields. Correct me if I'm wrong, the higher level competition is usually played on the east field. We make that the biggest field we can because that is our older age groups who play on the higher level. There's a much bigger demand for the height of the grass, how often the grass is cut, how often the grass is painted, and basically upkeep. We've been shutting down the east field for almost the entire spring to let it basically survive the fall. Because we realized when I first got here, we just come out of a drought and it looked awful. We've come light years from where we are, but we still have room to go. And I think the drainage and the grass itself needs a redo. And I think that the 1,100 kids is correct. It's a large program, and that is our largest field, and our most competitive teams play on that field on a regular basis. And it gets a lot of use. I mean, I think this is the second year I think we've shut it down completely in the spring so that it's ready and usable for summer and for fall, because it wouldn't hold up.
And I also would add that because of the location of it, it doesn't interfere with the rest of the park and the use of the park. And it is not an area that is used that often for other purposes other than recreation as so designed. So it allows us to maintain the integrity of our beautiful park, but also provide a service of safe, efficient fields for everyone playing on, kids and adults.
So is the main cost related to the grading or to the turf itself?
Oh, there's
Equally?
there's a grading issue, there's a draining issue in the church.
And
So
they're about equal.
I couldn't speak to what's higher, but I think if you're going to do it right, you're going to replace it all because your drainage and your grading and you have to work together. Otherwise, you're just wasting.
Mhm.
So I think that, we've had to piecemeal certain places to work on fixing goal amounts, fixing other areas. But again, if you look at the field, it's, like I said, better than it was, but there is still undulation where it does some of this or it does one of the, it's just from soil settling. Sure.
Yeah. Thank you. That makes more sense. I don't know how that's possible. Okay.
And I mean, my history is also if a club or someone's willing to make some support, it's helpful to know, hey, in 2 years, we can fundraise a bunch. Look at Scotty Lap. They did it for 6 months to get funding enough to pay for that skate park completely because they had ground rules and they had passion and they had some backing. If that's what's coming in the 2 years, and yes, they can it up. It's
So how do we, I mean,
so that's one item.
so
I think I think what I would like is a couple from Town Park and then let's move to another facility. But I think, yes.
yeah.
But I think loud and clear,
Okay.
East Field. So I guess let's tackle some of the things in Town Park and then kind of move to the next facility. Would be helpful.
I'd like to add one more with Town Park because I feel kind of strongly there's been a lot of trees that have been taken down noticeably. And I've spent a lot of time traveling to other parks in the Bay Area because of soccer season and seeing all the nice trees that are providing shelter and climbing structures for the kids and everything. I really think that should be prioritized because I don't think it's necessarily going to break the bank, but we do need to think long term and have some trees and coverage. And I know that is on one of the line items here. I just don't remember.
Item 1.
It's item 1.
Any
Yeah.
particular location or where they were removed
money or
originally
Um,
alongside?
Over by the tennis courts, there's that ginormous, I think it might have been an oak tree that was taken down around picnic areas. It's nice to have shade. It's, summers are getting warmer. So people would be able to use the park a lot more if there were some shady areas.
Actually, that is the next phase after for that particular area after the pickleball and tennis courts or pickleball and Scotty Lap expansion to the skate park is completed. Then there was a final phase of reconfiguring that remaining open area alongside the soccer field area where those trees were removed. There were, I think, 4 or 5 trees removed from that area. We were going to talk about this later in the director's update, but there is a possible plan in the works that's being evaluated alongside replanting of trees, and that's relocating some of the dirt that was excavated from the skate park and the restroom project and maybe creating a gentle berm of some sort and creating a more intentional gathering, picnic, waiting area facing the skate park and then also facing the field. It's still being evaluated as for feasibility and whether or not it's, there's support for it. But part of the plan for that, along with the relocation of that dirt, is to replant trees and shrubs and pollinators in that area, but also a more holistic look at where we can be more intentional with picnic spaces and trees and shade and planting park appropriate trees. So whether we take that piecemeal by area or on the park as a whole, that is something that staff wants to look at. And actually our risk pool is providing input, we'll be providing input on trees and best practices. So we're paying close attention to that too.
That's great.
Thank you.
I went through the line by line in Town Park and came up with some what I thought were priorities. The tables and the benches that are way, way past their life. I did mention the goals already. I thought that the distance markers was an easy thing to do and not a big ticket item, and I think it would help a lot of the people who use that for walking and running. And in terms of putting new trees in, please make sure they're not hazardous. We had a birthday party for my grandson many years ago in a park, and there were very tall pine cones dropping on people's heads. I mean, it was like life-threatening to stand there. So please make sure you don't have anything like that near the park. And in terms of the understory clearance, I just hope that you don't lose any kind of noise barrier between the neighbors and the pickleball and Scotty Lap. And I think, oh, except on the possible new entry, maybe you could do a Band-Aid of not a fabulous new entry, but some kind of a semi-new entry. And also, I wasn't sure where you were thinking of bocce.
So that was one of the options that our consultant provided as a possible remediation of the median between Pixley and the parking lot. There was talk about options that existed for reconfiguring that space to take away the unwanted large gatherings and open space for that purpose would be to locate possibly a bocce court in that space, but also carve out parking spaces and make it perpendicular parking on the street side rather than parallel parking. So it would also reduce some of the picnic area size and then change the use, offer more singular uses rather than large gathering spaces. I think there was one other spot that was earmarked for potential bocce. Was that over at Cove?
It was at Cove, it was in the discussion.
And then adjacent to Cafe Verde.
It was either that or where the horseshoe pits are currently outside of the rec
that-
center that get low use.
And of course, I have to put a plug in for outdoor senior equipment, which I think would be even just one or two pieces would be helpful. Thanks.
That
I'd second
equipment
that
that you
plug.
mentioned was also brought up as a possible staggered along the what's the name of that strip? The Bayfront Trail? Going down San Clemente?
Right. Basic show.
Bayside.
So based on some feedback I've heard from friends and people who live in the community, I agree with what Tim's saying. I've heard a lot of complaining about lack of shade. So I think that's something we need to prioritize. Selfishly, I will advocate for upgrading our playgrounds. I feel like the town park one is very rusty and old, and I find myself and a lot of our friends going to Larkspur all the time because they have newer structures and at a minimum, I think this line item that's number 3 for near term that upgrades at least those kids picnic tables. I never see anyone using them, probably because they look like a hazard to all the splinters you could get and the rust on there. So I think that could be an easy one. But then of course, the big ticket line item, which is under medium term, where it says, update the existing playground. But that looks like a really big, hefty ticket. So I'm sure we'll have to make decisions between a playground versus fields if that's something that I guess I don't know what number we're trying to reach. So
Couldn't you do part of updating the
Yeah,
children's
I don't know.
playground? One of the families I happened upon yesterday said that the bark chips and sand are terrible things to have in the little kids area, and they would love to have the sponge floor, whatever. I don't know what the name of it is,
Yeah,
but
like the
the same that they have
Resilient
over.
surfacing.
Maybe just a point of reference, we did, let's see, 2015 or 2016, removed the sand because there was a constant cycle of glass breakage. And then there was a petition to bring back sand, make town park sandy. that was not met with good feelings. But it's been almost 10 years since we did do that. So there could be a change in opinion, but the removal of the sand was controversial.
Interesting. I'm more interested in the structures itself. Like broken slide down the center where it's like cracked plastic. I mean, that stuff just does not seem good to have.
At Town Park?
Maybe it's like it's that playground that's closer to Neil Cummins. So I don't know if that's right. Like we manage that or Neil Cummins manages it. You know, the one that's right outside their fence.
Oh, that's Neil Cummins.
That's
That's a
no
school.
comments.
Okay.
Okay, I was like, which?
Ours is in the, around the,
Yeah, the one with the circle, right? And there's the sand and then that one is the one with the small kids picnic tables that I feel like at a minimum we could upgrade. But yeah, that's the one where I feel like the structures they're just old, outdated.
And not to sound like repetitive, but the topic of trees, shrubs, pollinators, partnering with local organizations like Refugia, where they can continue their work, where they have partnerships with the nurseries and whatnot, could be a good thing to look into. Expanding that work, and obviously as a enthusiast myself for ecology and native plants, gonna always bolster that.
I also noticed there was no shade on the little kid side of the kids' playground. And I wondered about some sails over there instead of having to plant trees.
All right, you guys want to move from Town Park? Are we taking these in? If we're taking them in order, then it looks like
You should also let us know, because me and Tim and Patty are going to meet again in advance of the longer discussion we're going to have. What are the ways we could, like, how do we make this discussion efficient? Because I remember last year this being really hard to
yeah.
get through.
Well, so I'm wondering if we, I'm taking notes as to what we're finding, and I'm seeing some themes, right, with respect to Town Park. Maybe you guys spend your extra volunteer time. Thanks for doing that. Maybe we narrow down and we focus on those and we have a little bit more of a robust conversation, but narrow down onto those, supplemented with some of the maybe financial realities and feedback that we're going to be getting from staff in the interim. And then we marry those two. If that sounds like a reasonable approach, then that's what I'm voting for.
Raw Excel file.
Before we leave Town Park entirely, there was a reference to maybe changing the asphalt to concrete or something, cement. And I wondered about the porous driveway that they have at the fire department. It doesn't pond. And I think anytime we're changing asphalt, it would be great to do that.
All right. So it sounds like all the commission has sort of talked about their near and dears for Town Park. If we can maybe move on then. Is there anything that's just really speaking to folks about Menke Park? Don't be afraid if there isn't at this particular time, that's fine too, but I want to invite anyone who's got something on as to Menke Park that is important to them to share now.
I think that the overall redesign that we had presented to us several months ago was very exciting opportunity. I don't know realistically budget-wise if we could focus on two big projects at the same time, but at some point that redesign is a fantastic thing to pursue. In the meantime, though, simply for the first line item, removing and thinning the vegetation to make for better seating and visibility, given the summer concerts are so popular. Really trying to make things safer there also, because it's a little tricky if anyone requires a bit of assistance with getting through the park and trying to sit. But big term, would love to get something, or long term, would love to get a redesign, but any improvement along the way, much like what we've done with the fields, where we've sort of had to adjust, do what we can until we can do the next big thing. Maybe redirect some of that maintenance.
I like that too. I thought redesign was really interesting. I like the vegetation thinning, and maybe there's this point about accessible seating spaces next to the pavilion. I'm always in favor of opening up opportunities for accessible seating.
On the bike rack question, is that adding an additional bike rack or is that replacing the bike rack with a new bike rack? I didn't understand that one. And also I wondered about the porous thing. I mentioned the fire department, I meant the police department. And also on the benches, please think about backs and arms so that people can get in and out. Thanks.
Okay, going once, going twice. I'm going to move to Higgins Landing, if that's okay with the commission. All right. Anything that's speaking to folks that's identified here? For me, this is something I don't know enough about, so I have nothing on this one, but I invite any other commissioner.
I think just given it's not a highly trafficked area, from my understanding, I wouldn't encourage allocating funds in that direction at this point.
Sounds fine to me.
Where it mentions adding planting, if there is planting put up, I would love for it to be butterfly and bee friendly.
Right. Bayside Trail. How about any of the commissioners have thoughts about this?
Tim, it talks about signage. Is there a need for the signage we discussed earlier in the meeting to be present there?
I mean, it's really not I mean, it's
It's not a
no
park.
gathering. There's
It-
more just a running trail, and a couple of benches spread through. So I mean, most of these rules wouldn't apply to that.
Right. So what are the signs? What do they say? The current signs.
I think what they currently say.
So they just name it as Bayside Trail?
I'm not, I would agree with that. I'm not sure I know at one point there was some trees planted there. But I don't currently know what the signage is.
That was another area where the beautification committee
Yes,
had
that's what it
planted a
was.
row of trees that were descriptive of the trees that you could request through the street tree program.
Oh,
So they're labeled. Got it. Sort of like by the town park pond. Those same trees are there. But yeah, I think most of the options just go to enhancing the availability of the path and seeking possible exercise opportunities within that trail. I don't know that there was much else to consider.
No, I think it was just like basically some wayfinding signage to connect the Bay Trail. Like that's how it kind of went. So that was all it was. That was at possibly looking at the.
Are you saying there were wayfinding or that would be proposed?
That was a discussion of where to connect.
Seems like a good idea.
Right.
So on this one, because it is so long and narrow, but it's fairly well used, and there's no parking. I do think potentially as a smaller item, additional seating, also the opportunity for those memorial benches. I think sometimes, people donate for those, so it might be something that's an easy thing to do, but it opens up this long stretch to allow more people to use it because right as it is right now, you get in it and you're committed. And so it might be that it opens up usefulness for people if there's a couple of seating opportunities. Anybody else thoughts on that? Right. Move to the Cove then. So this one for me, I have a strong, and also it's a low cost, the repair and replacement of the picnic tables there as well. Because there's also so few, they're constantly being used. They're used by, frankly, the kids even during the day during school. They're used all the time. I think there's maybe only two possibly over by the baseball park. I think there's just two there. And there's so many games, baseball, soccer, the basketball, that two doesn't do it. So people sit on the ground, which is also fine. But as far as equities amongst parks and use. I think that's a low hanging fruit at a low cost that would be really appreciated by the many people that use Cove.
So do these benches need replacement, or would sanding and staining do it?
That's a good question. I don't know. Sanding game is not on. I don't know. I'd have to leave that one to. It might be that this is such a low cost because it is just some basic sanding, but I'm also making a plug for additional repair, replace if there's even an opportunity to have one more. It's a very small amount of bench picnic tables, actually, I guess is what I should be calling them. Sorry. There's 2 picnic tables for all of that area. It's not a lot.
So are you looking at this one? Add group picnic area with shade structure includes paving structures, site furnishings.
I was going to eventually get to that one, but
Oh,
this
okay.
one's even further up. Yes to that as well.
Okay.
But no, on page 40, about midway
Oh.
down, this is under addresses deficiencies. It's 5,000 repair and replace picnic
The
tables.
first item for Cove Park.
Okay.
And then speaking to that, moving along, this idea of, maybe some additional ones and some shade. I think that would go such an incredible long distance to making Cove a place that is a little bit easier to use, but it is really high trafficked.
Is
Which
it
is
very sunny there so
great.
that shade cloths are, okay.
And it's great, but it is constantly used because also it's used by the kids at the school during the day as well. So it's used all around the clock. And so having some places for picnicking and for more use would be great.
I had a question about the ball field. Is the metal bench hot for the players to sit on?
No,
Lunch in the dugout.
No? That's amazing.
Oh,
freezing over there.
Reason, yeah.
If you were in like,
It'd be better if it was
That's
heated.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, somehow that little area is freezing cold because there's some nice shade. And then just a little bit over, there's the 2 picnic tables that are, and no other shade.
I will say the school is looking at resurfacing that basketball court in the next. They've already reached out to us about the trailers back there in the garden. They're going to resurface that basketball court before the school year starts.
Nice.
Also, that would be a great place to put some senior outdoor equipment.
Keeping with the Cove, we talked about, and I think it's on page 41, but it's, sort of a proposed idea, this additional pathway to discourage bikes from going through the athletic fields. Cause I know there's been complaints about the fields, potholes and renovation and it being used a lot and muddy. And because there is really no other path and kids just bike straight through it, it might make the usefulness of the park better. It also might alleviate some costs associated with maintenance.
The first one on page 41 to have food truck events, cultural events, and holiday events. There is really nowhere on the other side of the freeway where half of the population lives to gather like there is on the west side of the freeway. And I feel like they're left out. So if we could create some kind of a gathering place over there, it would be wonderful.
That aligns pretty well with like what the community garden is aiming for, which also connects to that picnic table narrative, because obviously with the food source, you want an area where people can actually like eat that. And that's a great place for people who maybe don't have accessibility to those sort of things. So really stressing that. We also do have pathways that are going to go through that park. And I know I sound like repetitive, but just want to stress some things and anything we can do to include our own action plans while we're literally constructing something to, kill a couple birds with some stones. Never literally, but you know what I mean?
Okay, if there's anything else on Cove, otherwise maybe we could move to Granada Park. Right, anyone have anything that's near and dear for Granada Park?
Definitely finish that pathway. It looks like they just ran out of path at some point. So that seems like a good idea to have that go all the way around. And I don't know what the solution to the potty is because it's necessary to be there. It's necessary for it to be ADA. And it wouldn't fit where the other one was, so they had to move it to the parking. So now we've lost half the parking. So I don't know what the answer is.
Well, they talked about, one of these is creating an enclosure for the portable restrooms. That could be something where they put something up out of the parking lot to make an enclosure. That would solve that issue.
Yeah, I would definitely support that. I think parking there is an issue, even if it's just both tennis courts being used and all of a sudden you can't find a parking spot, then all the way up on the street is pretty far off. It seems like kind of a silly place to put the toilets.
Great. Thanks. All right. Pat?
They told me that the place where the porta potty used to be wasn't accessible, and that's why it had to be moved into the parking lot. Is that what happened? But there is the flat space, like right when you come in at the bottom of the hill, so we'll look into it.
100% sure, but I will check it out.
All right, that leads us to Skunk Hollow. Out of what's there, I think, the benches maybe are the only thing I think that's probably needs more attention than others at this point, but I think it's fairly well maintained. And so it's not even though it's in my neighborhood, it's not, I think, a top priority in connection with all the other things that we've got on our wish lists, at least for me.
Is the oleander deemed a liability? Is that why it's a near-term project instead of a middle-term or long-term?
I don't want to give you wrong information, Patty. The oleanders, why they were to take out.
I believe that came up in our discussions with the landscape architect out of concerns that oleanders are hazardous to dogs. Poisonous, they're poisonous for dogs. And I suppose children if they ate them, but dogs were more likely to nibble on them, and that they were better suited for street and freeway median growth rather than park bush.
My question was just about near-term versus middle or late-term.
I don't know how they designated it other than I think it was going to be approached as they got around to.
I think it was near term as it could be accomplished within the 5 years. Like it is a 5 to a 10-year long term. So something
okay.
could be done in less than 5 years. But obviously come out and put something else back in.
All right. So Tim, do you think you have what you need from us? And
I would ask Lisa and Patty, I mean, a lot of information. Thank you. Let's see Lisa's head spinning. Yes, I think this is a good first step. And then I think we'll come back with a lot of information and then have another discussion.
There are 3 more pages to go through.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I think I have enough information. I mean, I'll defer to Lisa.
Part of me wonders if we should organize this by park instead of this arbitrary near-term, medium-term, long-term, just to make it easier to look at one park at a time, or I don't know. What do you guys think?
So I think at least when I was talking about things for Town Park and Cove, I was drawing from both. But
Right.
so I think that
Yeah,
maybe does
too. I
make
was
more
looking at
sense.
all of the.
Yeah. I think some of us were drawing from both just to take it park specific, but to that point, then it makes sense rather than the back and forth to probably organize it by park.
Unless is there still relevance to the terms? Given that this was written a year ago?
I think the terms are like how long it would take. That's why the 0 to 5, 5 to 10
Yeah.
are beyond that. So I think there's still some relevance. I mean, we can still bring it back as park. It's fine.
Yeah.
We want to present it whatever way it's the most digestible and for everybody here.
Is the gate by the dance studio a high priority?
It's not a facility. So these were just facilities. So that wasn't a
It
facility.
was on here.
Was it access maybe? I mean, a high priority
The
is
double gate to get from the dance studio area to the dog park area.
only a single gate that I think has some ADA issues about access down for the pathway up to the dance studio from what I And then parking, there's a parking, you open it up to a parking stall, basically. There'd be some reformatting of the stalls and then the access.
It's on 42, third from the bottom, improve parking at Park Madera Center and create a double gate entry path from the dance studio to the east side of the park. So is there a way to park by the dance studio and get to the park right there?
The gate is currently locked.
Okay, so that would be a very helpful thing. And I didn't understand what was wrong with the parking, that it says improved parking. I think the parking's good.
Improve parking for where are you? Sorry, in Town Park itself?
Park
I think-
Madera Center.
I think we just access the park. Because it really is, I mean, unless you, if you're by Tim's house, literally you have to walk around to get, because you can't go through there because it's not a 8A path.
I think that double gate that goes to the was it the east side of the dog park, it would also be a little bit dangerous. It's not like a smooth transition on there, so it would need to be paving. I think it's a bigger project. I don't know how useful, would you think that would be a useful, I mean, people would use it quite a bit. I don't see too many people.
I don't use the dog park, but it seems like it's a great place to park for the dog park.
Yes, but I'm not sure the businesses in that area would appreciate parking being.
That was
Park
discussed
goers.
when the dog park was originally conceived. It was discussed as a possible third phase to figure out a way to enhance parking at the Eastman lot and the Park Madera Center lot. And that was one of the issues that was discussed, was it may be possible. The reason why that gate was closed, I guess it used to originally or initially at some point be another entrance into the park. And possibly before it became town property. So I don't know when that gate was in use, but it hasn't been used in recent years because of the concern that people will park there and take away from patrons being able to park there for the businesses in that lot.
Maybe that gate is from when the horses used to graze there.
It's entirely possible.
One last thing regarding Town Plaza, I was wondering, because it's come up in a few meetings over the last year or so, are the leases and whether or not any of those places are not planning to renew, and if we need to already start thinking about other uses for those places, the Petco and around the dance studio. And I know we're trying to always find out what, could be a better source for, for other uses, in other words. So if we can maybe look into it, find out if that's even something we need to be thinking about, if they're a big lease or whatnot.
All right, so I think Patty, you mentioned that you still had comments in the last few pages. I think, at least for my part, I had gone through them, but we can revisit some if you've got some.
I wondered about this concept of adding a pavilion and picnic area whole structure. And if it's only $115,000, that sounds amazing. So yeah, I hadn't heard anything about that. I wondered if that was real.
What page are you on? Sorry.
This is on page 44, the second one down.
I think in general, everything listed here could be real. That's the idea. The consultants provided us with these ideas and opportunities, but now it's up to us to say what we as a commission feel is most important.
I just thought that the price was amazing. It's like too good to be true.
Yeah, they were definitely estimates. I don't recall off the top of my head where they thought that would be placed in the park. I know they did if you shoved everything park, you could fit all these pieces together, but I don't remember where that pavilion was. I actually think it was, if I recall correctly, over by the playground, but I could be wrong.
All right, well, if there's not anything else that's really pressing for folks about any of the parks, then maybe we've given Tim and our ad hoc committee enough to think about for now. Okay, all right. Thanks very much. That was a great discussion. I'm going to move us now to the staff updates and commissioner reports.
So quick updates, volunteer recognition dinner, the email went out before this meeting. It'll be November 8th at the community center at 6 o'clock. Please RSVP to Becca if you're able to attend. Again, it was like last year, thanking all the commissions and the hard work people do on a regular basis for the town, for that dinner. Turkey. And community service, I guess, sorry, I will. Turkey trot again scheduled for Thanksgiving morning, working with a couple of local residents and some of nonprofit groups. So looking for some volunteers, both to work the day of the event and possibly transfer over, taking it on going forward. Letters to Santa, we will accepting those letters November 8th through the 13th and sending them off to the big man himself to get requests granted from children. So please drop those at Rec Center. They have a mailbox at the front door when you walk in. Corte Madera Invitation Art Show is again scheduled for December 9th to the 18th, with the closing reception on the 18th. This year, we are doing the art show, and we are also displaying all artwork from the Painted Brands projects, not just the winners. Everybody who submitted a piece of art will be displayed on that one day. We're going to use every piece of the Rec Center we can to get all the art up. They did a separate standalone event, didn't have a great turnout, so they're going to loop it in with the art show to make sense for all the artists for a closing reception and refreshments and all the youth art. Gingerbread house making is slotted for December 21st. There's still space available. And finally, tomorrow is the blood drive at the community center run by the Kentfield Fire Department. They're still opening and people can donate blood.
Great. Thank you. And now commissioner reports. Patty.
Continuing on with the Christmas events. Last Christmas, I asked if next Christmas we might consider the snow again that was during the centennial. It was very, very popular, and I would like to put it back on the think about it pile. Okay, so I attended 2 meetings, the October 1st council meeting. If Measure B is passed on November 5th, Redwood High plans to resurface their pool. So the SOMA 2025 summer program might not be available there. The question was raised, could it be at Best Western or Marin Suites? There was some minor graffiti vandalism to the new restroom in Town Park. A juvenile was identified via the security cameras, and now it is under the purview of the Central Marin Police. We should probably anticipate increased incidents with the skate park revamp and the new pickleball, and staff is evaluating the best ways to deter this. Regarding the intergenerational center, the building that was being considered near Restoration Hardware on Meadow Creek has major challenges with capacity and parking allowances. Adam wants to pause and pivot. We're sort of back to the drawing board to seek other sites. This is in tandem with developing the vision of the center, operating plans, costs, programming, staffing, funding, etc. And at the town council meeting on October 15th, the first hour was a discussion about the 3-year contract with the current landscapers, which ultimately passed 3-2. A portion of their funding comes from the recreation budget. Adam added that it would be helpful to create a town council ad hoc advisory subcommittee to work with the staff on the search for a more appropriate site for the AFIC. Mayor Beckman asked for volunteers, and immediately Fred Casisa and Pat Ravasio stepped up. They will be invited to attend the October 16th Age-Friendly Corte Madera meeting along with Adam. The ad hoc subcommittee will report back to the council on regular intervals with recommendations regarding the center. That's all I got.
Thank you, Patty. The Executive Advisory Committee did not meet this month. We've got the Pickleball Tennis Court Rules Ad Hoc Committee. I think that's sort of reported out already, or is there anything else to share? No?
No, I'd just like to thank Tim. I think we knocked it out. I don't know if we need to disband the subcommittee or if we want to keep it and have a check-in after it's been established and we can review some of the rules. Maybe keep it open and then we'll just readdress it after we've had our grand launch.
Perfect. And thank you both. Next, the 2025 work plan items ad hoc committee. I think it's Lisa and Patty. Get your work cut out for you.
Yep.
Okay.
Got lots to think about.
All right. You've got all the appreciation coming your way. Okay. So then let's see here. Before we close the meeting, are there any topics that the commissioners would like to put on future agendas? I have to say, Tim, I'm a little curious about the movie theater. It's sort of sitting there dilapidated, I think. I'm wondering if, I don't want to have stepped in it. But I'm curious. I'm curious about it. So it doesn't have to be next meeting. I'm putting it out there. I'm putting it out there. Just as I was hearing Patty talk about the, questions of site location, it came to mind.
The community pool.
Yeah. Lisa. Anything else anybody would like to put on for future agendas? Okay, all right. Commissioner Miles is next on deck for a town council meeting, so I see what she's done here. All right, if there's nothing else, I'm going to close the meeting and note that the next meeting of Parks and Rec is actually specially scheduled for Monday, December 2nd. Thank you all so much for your good conversation and attendance.